I never thought I would say this, but I was the bride who stood at the altar completely alone. Imagine walking into the place where you're supposed to begin your new life. Flowers perfectly arranged, music echoing off the walls, and realizing every chair behind you is empty. No laughter, no whispered excitement, no proud parents wiping away tears. Nothing. My name is Harper Monroe, and on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I wasn't just abandoned, I was erased. When I tell people this story, they usually ask the same question first. Not even your parents came? And I can only shake my head. Not my mother, Elaine Monroe, the woman who raised me with iron expectations and sharp words. Not my father, Richard, who spent my whole life standing in the shadows of my mother's choices, rarely stepping in to defend me. And definitely not my older sister, Vivian, the golden child, the perfect daughter, the one who could do no wrong. I should probably tell you a little about them before I go further, because understanding them is the only way to understand how this nightmare unfolded. Elaine was the kind of mother who loved control more than affection. Her voice carried weight. She could silence a room with one sharp look. Growing up, I learned early that her approval wasn't freely given. It was earned, and sometimes, no matter what I did, I never seemed to earn it. My father, Richard, wasn't cruel, but he was quiet. He followed Elaine's lead in everything, even when I desperately wished he'd take my side. And then there was Vivian. She was older by 2 years and brighter in every possible way. Or at least that's how my parents always saw her. She had the best grades, the best friends, the best job offers, and eventually the best fiancé. At family dinners, conversations were never about me. They were about Vivian's achievements. If I brought up something I was proud of, it was dismissed with a polite nod, then followed by an enthusiastic story about Vivian's latest success. So maybe, deep down, I shouldn't have been surprised when they chose her over me. But nothing could have prepared me for the reality of standing alone on my wedding day. My groom, Ethan Clark, tried to hold it together for me. Ethan was the one person who had always seen me, really seen me. He wasn't flashy or loud, but he was steady, dependable, and endlessly kind. When we first met, he told me, "You don't have to be perfect for me. Just be you." Those words meant more than he probably ever realized, because in my family's eyes, being myself was never enough. And yet, on this day, even Ethan's love couldn't soften the blow of what was happening. As I stood by the altar, my eyes kept darting to the door, waiting. I thought maybe there'd been a mistake. Maybe they were running late. Maybe something had happened on the way. My stomach churned with a sick mixture of hope and dread. But as minutes ticked by, hope drained. A way nobody was coming. Not my mother, not my father, not even a distant cousin. The truth? They weren't late. They were never coming. Because at that very moment, while I stood in my white dress gripping Ethan's hand, my entire family was across town at Vivian's glamorous engagement party. That was their priority. Not me, not my vows, not my future. Her ring, her party, her spotlight. It's one thing to feel invisible growing up. It's another thing entirely to have your invisibility confirmed in front of the person you're marrying and the strangers who were paid to set out flowers and serve food. The humiliation hit me in waves. Every empty chair felt like a judgment, a reminder that to them, I didn't matter. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, it happened. I was cutting the wedding cake, forcing myself to smile for the sake of Ethan and the handful of staff watching, when my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. At first, I ignored it, but it wouldn't stop. When I finally pulled it out, the screen glared back at me. 42 missed calls, all from my mom. A single text sat waiting beneath the missed calls. My mother's words, sharp and demanding as always. "Call me now." I froze, staring at the phone. My hands shook, but not with sadness. Something inside me snapped. For the first time in my life, I wasn't panicked about what she wanted or desperate to know why she suddenly cared. I just smiled. Because in that moment, I knew whatever reason she was begging for my attention wasn't about love for me. It was about something else, something she couldn't control, something that would destroy her. And I was ready to listen, not because I needed her, but because for the first time, I held the power. When people imagine their wedding, they picture magic. They picture family gathered in rows, smiles all around, parents proudly walking their daughter down the aisle. That was the dream I held onto while planning mine. I thought if there was ever a day my family would set aside their favoritism, their comparisons, their endless worship of my sister, it would be for my wedding. I wasn't naive enough to think my parents would suddenly see me the way they saw Vivian, but I thought maybe, just maybe, love would be enough to make them show up. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I lived on equal parts nerves and excitement. I stayed up late writing vows, trying to pour every ounce of my love for Ethan into words. I triple-checked seating charts, flower orders, playlists. Ethan teased me about my lists, saying, "Harper, you're going to stress yourself out before the big day even arrives." I'd laugh, but inside my anxiety had nothing to do with flowers or cake flavors. Deep down, I was worried about my family. You see, things had always been uneven. My mother, Elaine, wasn't a woman who offered hugs or reassurances. She offered critiques. My hair was too frizzy. My posture was too slouched. My choices were too small. She would say things like, "Harper, you're settling again. Don't you want more for yourself?" But her idea of more was always defined by Vivian. And Vivian, well, she was everything I wasn't. 2 years older, sharper, louder, more dazzling. People were drawn to her in ways they never were to me. At school, teachers called her a prodigy. At work, she climbed ladders faster than anyone else. At home, my parents bragged about her nonstop. Every family dinner turned into a performance, with Vivian center stage and me as the silent audience. It wasn't that I hated her. I wanted to love her, to be close. But Vivian had a way of reminding me of my place. She'd flash that perfect smile and say things like, "You'll get there, Harper." Not everyone can shine right away. She didn't mean it kindly. Still, I thought blood mattered. I thought family mattered. So when Ethan proposed, the first person I called wasn't my best friend or my boss. It was my mother. I'll never forget her response. She didn't squeal or congratulate me. She simply asked, "When?" I said, "Next spring." There was a pause, and then her clipped reply, "You know Vivian's engagement is around then." I remember swallowing hard, my excitement dimming. "Well, we'll make it work." It's just one day. Her sigh carried more weight than her words. "We'll see, Harper." That should have been my warning. But I pushed the doubt down and threw myself into planning. Ethan's family was supportive, sweet, and constantly checking in. His mother even helped me pick out the lace veil I'd always wanted. And every time I looked at Ethan, I felt steadier. He was my anchor. He reminded me that no matter how messy my family was, I wasn't alone. Still, I craved my parents' involvement. I asked my mom to come to my dress fitting. She waved me off, saying Vivian needed her for her engagement party venue walkthrough. I asked my dad if he'd rehearse walking me down the aisle. He said, "We'll figure it out when the time comes." But the time never came. One night, a week before the wedding, I tried again. I called my mom. "Please, Mom," I said softly. "It would mean a lot if you'd come to the rehearsal dinner. I don't care about gifts or money or anything else. I just want you there." Her voice was brisk. "Harper, your sister's event is the same weekend. You're asking too much. Don't make me choose." My chest tightened. "But you are choosing." She didn't answer. She just hung up. I cried that night in Ethan's arms. He whispered, "If they don't come, we'll still be okay. We'll make our own family." His words comforted me, but they also scared me, because I couldn't shake the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, on the wedding day they'd surprise me. I imagined my mother walking in late but proud, my father patting Ethan on the back, whispering that he'd take care of me. Even Vivian pulling me into a hug and saying, "You deserve this, Harper." I clung to those visions, even when every sign pointed the other way. I wanted to believe in them. I wanted to believe that for once I'd be enough. And so, when the wedding day arrived, I dressed carefully, my hands trembling as I fastened the veil. I told myself the silence from my parents' phones was just nerves, not neglect. I walked into that venue praying the empty seats would soon fill, praying my family would finally see me. But what I got was something entirely different. The morning of my wedding should have felt magical. I had imagined waking up to text messages from my parents, from Vivian, even from my father. Something simple like, "We're proud of you." Instead, when I rolled over and checked my phone, there was nothing, not a single word. I told myself they were saving it for later, that they wanted to surprise me in person. I pushed the ache down, forcing a smile as I looked at my reflection. The white dress shimmered in the soft light of the room, and for a moment, I let myself feel beautiful. Ethan's mom, who had insisted on helping me get ready, clasped her hands together and whispered, "Oh, Harper, you look like an angel." Her words made me tear up, but they also stung, because they weren't my mother's words. When Ethan came to check on me before the ceremony, his eyes lit up. He kissed my forehead and said, "No matter what happens, it's you and me, okay? Today is about us." I nodded, gripping his hand like it was the only thing keeping me upright, but nothing prepared me for what came next. When the music began, I took a deep breath and stepped into the ceremony hall. My heels clicked against the floor, and I lifted my gaze to the rows of seats. For a heartbeat, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Row after row sat empty. The front pew, where my parents should have been, was bare. The bridesmaids' seats were untouched, their bouquets still resting where the florist had placed them. Silence filled the space, not the hushed excitement of a crowd waiting for the bride, but the hollow echo of absence. The only faces staring back at me were strangers. The caterers adjusting trays, the photographer shifting uncomfortably, the officiant trying to hide his shock. My stomach dropped. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. This wasn't happening. I kept walking because stopping would mean collapsing, and I refused to fall apart in front of everyone. Ethan stood at the altar, his smile trembling as he realized the truth. He reached for me, his touch steady, but I could see the hurt in his eyes, too. We said our vows in a silence so heavy it pressed down on us. The words I had poured my heart into, words about love, about building a life together, hung in the air, unanswered by the people who were supposed to witness them. After the ceremony, Ethan tried to distract me. "We'll take pictures anyway," he whispered. But each click of the camera was like a cruel reminder that the frames would always be incomplete. No father-daughter picture, no proud family photo, just me, Ethan, and a handful of empty chairs in the background. Then came the worst part, the reception. The staff, unsure what to do, carried out food for dozens of guests who weren't there. Platters of roasted chicken and bowls of salad sat untouched, drinks lined up with no one to claim them. The music felt eerie without laughter to accompany it. I tried to smile, to pretend, but humiliation burned in my chest. I felt like a child again, begging for my mother's attention, only to be ignored. Except this time, the whole world could see it. And then, the final blow came, not in person, but through a glowing screen. As I sat with Ethan, forcing myself to cut into the wedding cake, my phone buzzed with a new message. At first I ignored it, but the buzzing didn't stop. My hands shook as I pulled it from my pocket, expecting maybe, finally, a text from my mom saying, "We're on our way." But what I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a text, it was a string of notifications, a family group chat message I had somehow been left in by mistake. Vivian's words glared back at me. "So glad everyone's here to celebrate us. Can't believe you skipped Harper's little wedding for me, but hey, priorities." My breath caught in my throat, my eyes blurred with tears, but the words were still there, mocking me. They weren't late, they weren't busy. They had chosen her. They had chosen her glittering engagement party over my once-in-a-lifetime moment. A laugh escaped me, sharp, bitter, broken. Ethan's hand tightened around mine, his voice low. "Don't read it. Don't let them take this from you." But it was too late. The betrayal had sunk in. Every empty chair wasn't an accident. Every unanswered call in the weeks before wasn't coincidence. They had made their choice. My family had erased me, right when I needed them most. And I sat there, dressed in white, with frosting on my fork and a hollow ache spreading through my chest, realizing the truth. I had just married the love of my life in a room full of strangers, while the people who raised me toasted champagne to my sister across town. After reading that group chat message, the one where Vivian gloated about everyone being at her engagement party instead of my wedding, I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I sat frozen, the phone still in my hand, Ethan's voice faint in the background, urging me to put it down. In that moment, I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm out, rip off the dress, and pretend none of this was happening. But beneath the humiliation and the heartbreak, something else stirred. It wasn't rage, and it wasn't grief. It was a quiet, stubborn strength. I lifted my eyes to Ethan. His face was tight with anger. Not at me, but at them. He brushed his thumb across my hand and whispered, "It's your call. Whatever you want to do, I'm with you." The simplicity of his words undid me. For so long, I had begged for scraps of validation from my family. But here was a man, standing in front of me, who didn't need me to prove anything, who chose me without conditions. And in that moment, I made my decision. I wasn't going to let my family steal this day from me. They had already taken so much, my childhood confidence, my self-worth, my peace of mind, but they weren't going to take my marriage. Not this time. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and turned to Ethan with a steadiness I didn't know I had. "We're finishing this," I said. My voice shook, but my resolve didn't. His eyes softened and he nodded. "Then we finish it together." So we did. The reception, though nearly empty, became something different. Without the noise of my family overshadowing me, the space felt strangely clear. The handful of staff lingered politely, unsure if they should leave or stay. And when they realized we still intended to celebrate, they stepped up in ways I'll never forget. The chef came out of the kitchen, smiling warmly, and said, "You two go ahead and dance. I'll keep the music going." One of the servers placed flowers from the unused centerpieces into vases around our table, trying to brighten the mood. The photographer, who had been awkwardly capturing empty rows, started focusing on us, on our hands intertwined, our whispered laughter, our choice to keep going. Ethan led me to the center of the room. The first notes of our song floated through the speakers, and for the first time that day, I let myself breathe. We danced slowly, his arms wrapped around me like a promise. I laid my head on his shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for not letting me crumble." He kissed my hair. "You don't need them, Harper." "You never did." His words hit something deep. For years, I had been haunted by the idea that I wasn't enough, that no matter what I did, it would never measure up to Vivian. But as I looked into Ethan's eyes, I realized I didn't have to measure up. I only had to choose myself. The symbolic weight of it all wasn't lost on me. My family had abandoned me, but Ethan stayed. He stood beside me, steady and unshaken, even when every seat behind us was empty. And in that quiet room, surrounded by flowers meant for people who never came, I felt a shift. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was a wife. I was loved. I was chosen. Later, when it came time to cut the cake, I took the knife in my hands, my grip firm. The tradition felt hollow without cheers or clapping, but it also felt defiant. Every slice was a statement. You didn't show up, but I showed up for myself. Ethan fed me the first bite, and I laughed, a real laugh, not the broken, bitter one from earlier. It tasted sweeter than I expected. Still, my phone buzzed again in my pocket, relentless. 42 missed calls, all from my mother. I felt Ethan's questioning glance, but I shook my head, smiling faintly. "Not yet," I murmured. For the first time, I wasn't desperate to know what she wanted. I wasn't desperate for her approval or her explanation. I had taken back the power she had always dangled over me like a prize I could never win. And as I stood there, my wedding cake half eaten, my husband's hand warm against mine, I realized the turning point wasn't just about finishing the ceremony. It was about choosing myself. I hadn't lost everything that day. I had lost illusions. I had lost the false hope that my parents would ever put me first. And in their place, I had found clarity. This was my life now, my choice, my family. One I was building with Ethan brick by brick without apologies. And though I didn't know it yet, my mother's desperate calls weren't about guilt or reconciliation. They were about something else, something she couldn't control, something that would unravel everything. But for now, I let the phone buzz unanswered, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one chasing after them. The buzzing wouldn't stop. My phone sat on the table beside the cake, vibrating so violently it nearly toppled over. Ethan gave me a look, half concerned, half curious, but I shook my head. I wasn't ready. For once, I wanted to hold on to the small pocket of peace I had carved out, even if it was fragile. But the screen kept lighting up. Mom, Mom, Mom. 42 missed calls, a relentless drumbeat of desperation. Finally, Ethan placed his hand gently on mine. "Harper," he said softly, "you don't owe her anything. But maybe you should see what this is about. She's not usually this persistent." He was right. My mother didn't beg. She commanded. She dictated. And the sheer number of calls meant something had happened. Something big. I exhaled sharply and picked up the phone. For a second, I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then, with a shaky breath, I swiped to answer. "Mom?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. There was no pretense, no cold composure on the other end. Instead, Elaine's voice cracked, high-pitched and panicked. "Harper!" Finally, "Oh, thank God," you answered. "You need to come home. Right now. It's Vivian. Something terrible has happened." The words hit like ice water down my spine. I stiffened, glancing at Ethan. He tilted his head, silently asking what was happening. I clenched the phone tighter. "What are you talking about?" My mother's words tumbled out in a rush. Her usual control shattered. Her fiancé, he left her. Right there, in front of everyone. He ran off with her maid of honor. Do you understand? It's a scandal. "People are talking, Harper. Everyone's talking. We need you to come back and help us fix this." For a moment, I didn't move. My brain couldn't process what I was hearing. My sister, the golden girl, the flawless daughter, abandoned, humiliated, exposed. I should have felt shock, maybe even pity. But what I felt instead was an overwhelming, surreal calm. "Help you fix this," I repeated slowly. Elaine's voice trembled. "Yes, Harper. You don't understand. This is destroying us. The Monroe name is being dragged through the mud. People are gossiping, laughing. You have to stand with us. We can't let Vivian face this alone." And that was when something inside me finally snapped. Not with grief, but with clarity. I let out a bitter laugh, one that startled even me. "You didn't stand with me today. You didn't even show up. You left me alone on the most important day of my life. And now you want me to rush to Vivian's side because she got embarrassed?" There was a pause. I could almost picture my mother's face, her lips tightening, her eyes narrowing. But her voice came back sharp, desperate. "Don't be selfish, Harper. This is bigger than you. Your sister needs you. We need you. Stop making everything about your hurt feelings." The audacity of it made my chest burn. My hurt feelings, as if my wedding, my vows, my entire day being abandoned was some trivial tantrum. I stood up from the table, pacing as anger flooded me. But my voice stayed icy. "You had a choice today, Mom. You could have supported me. You could have been there for me. And you chose Vivian. You always choose Vivian. Don't call me now because the golden child's crown has slipped. I'm not your backup plan." Ethan's hand touched my arm gently, steadying me, his eyes telling me to breathe, but I couldn't stop. On the other end, Elaine's tone hardened, her panic laced with venom. "You ungrateful girl, do you know what people are saying about this family? About Vivian? About me? If you don't come now, you'll regret it. Don't think for a second you can cut us off." Blood is blood, Harper. For years, those words, blood is blood, had been a leash around my neck, but not anymore. I took a long breath, then said the words I had never had the courage to say. "You're right, Mom. Blood is blood. But family? Family is the people who show up, and you showed me today that you're not my family." Silence, just the faint sound of her breathing, shallow and furious. Then I did something that felt like reclaiming every piece of myself she had chipped away. I pulled the phone from my ear, hit the red button, and ended the call. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel small. I felt free. Ethan's arms circled me, pulling me close. He whispered, "I'm proud of you." And as I leaned into him, a strange, liberating thought filled me. Maybe my mother's world had just crumbled, but mine was just beginning. When I hung up on my mother that night, the silence felt different. For years, silence had been heavy, suffocating, filled with all the words my parents never said to me. But this silence was light, freeing. Like I had finally closed a door that had been slamming in my face my entire life. Ethan was still holding me, his thumb brushing against my back as if he knew I was shaking from more than just anger. He leaned down and whispered, "You don't owe them anything, Harper." Not anymore. And for the first time, I believed him. The rest of the reception wasn't grand or glamorous, but it was real. The photographer, bless him, turned the evening into something intimate. He captured shots of Ethan and me laughing over cake, of us dancing alone under twinkling lights, of me barefoot on the dance floor because my heels hurt, and I no longer cared about appearances. They weren't the wedding photos I thought I'd have, but they were honest. They were ours. Later that night, after everyone left, Ethan and I sat together, surrounded by wilting flowers and untouched plates of food. I leaned my head against his shoulder and whispered, "I thought today would break me, but it didn't." He kissed the top of my head. "No, Harper. It made you stronger," and he was right. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of messages from my mother and Vivian. Some were frantic, begging me to come to the family home. Others were sharp, filled with blame and accusations. "You're heartless. You turned your back on us. You're jealous." For once, I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I didn't beg for them to see my side. I deleted every message and blocked their numbers. Because here's the truth I finally learned. Love isn't proven by bloodlines or last names. It's proven by who shows up for you when it matters. And on my wedding day, when the people I had spent my whole life trying to please turned their backs, the person who mattered most stood right beside me. That was enough. The weeks that followed were hard. Word spread quickly. Friends texted me in shock, saying they couldn't believe my family had skipped my wedding. Some relatives tried to stay neutral, but their silence only showed me where they stood. Others whispered that I was cruel for cutting ties, that I should forgive. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people keep hurting you. Forgiveness, I realized, is sometimes letting go entirely. I threw myself into building my life with Ethan. We moved into a small house, painted the walls ourselves, and filled it with laughter. His parents visited often, bringing casseroles and warmth, treating me like the daughter they never had to favor over anyone else. For the first time, I felt what unconditional family love was supposed to feel like. Did it hurt sometimes to think about my parents? Of course. There were moments when I stared at old photos and wondered what could have been if they had chosen me too. But those moments became fewer, softer, easier to live with. And then there were the times I thought of Vivian. I wondered if she hated me for not running to her side, for not fixing the mess her fiancé left behind. But then I remembered her text, her smug celebration that my family had skipped my wedding. She made her choice long before I made mine. One evening, Ethan and I sat on our porch watching the sunset. I turned to him and said, "You know, I think losing them was the best thing that ever happened to me." He raised an eyebrow. "Even your sister?" I smiled faintly. "Especially my sister. Because if they hadn't abandoned me, I might never have realized how much of myself I was giving away just to win their love. And now I get to give that love to someone who actually deserves it." Ethan kissed me then, soft and steady, the way he always did. And in that moment, I knew the truth. I hadn't lost a family that day. I had gained clarity. I had gained strength. I had gained the freedom to build something better. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible to the people who should love you most, hear me when I say this. You are not unworthy. You are not broken. And you don't have to keep chasing after people who refuse to see you. Family isn't about who shares your blood. Family is about who shows up when everyone else walks away. On the day my parents and sister abandoned me, I thought my world had ended. But really, it was just beginning. And I walked into that beginning hand in hand with the only person who ever truly chose me.